We have an enormously distinguished panel to discuss the falling dollar. Should we worry? We've all seen them. The arrogant Englishmen flying over, arriving at Kennedy Airport with extra suitcases, wandering around New York, buying all their Christmas shopping, with impeccable taste, going back to London with 200 I Heart New York t-shirts, and bragging to their friends that they've done nothing but eat at the best restaurants in Little Italy. We've got used to the boastful and proud Canadians swarming across the border from Toronto to Detroit and Buffalo, saying in that arrogant way that the Canadians have, that although five generations of McKenzies have gone to McGill, Yale looks such a bargain this year.
Those of us with long enough memory recall that about 23 years ago we had a similar session here. This session today is The Falling Dollar, Should We Worry? The title of that session was The Rising Dollar, Should We Worry? During that year, and I think that John and I participated in Jackson Hole, the conclusion was that the issue is not the falling dollar or the rising dollar, but what was described then in Jackson Hole, the rocking dollar on the Rocky Mountains, or the bouncing dollar. So this was the context there. My question for today is this. If we did not have the housing crisis, the prime, subprime issue, and all of those kind of things, would we have discussed today that particular session here? And given that I think that the overall environment, including the macroeconomic setting, is very much influenced by that show, aren't we going to fall into the danger of barking the wrong tree and coming back to a currency debate where the game is really in a different area?
Well, Jacob has always asked some provocative questions. I'll just address one of those, and I'm sure other panelists will weigh in on the others. I completely agree, and certainly have written on this a number of times, that it is both misleading and potentially very misleading to focus very narrowly on currencies, when really what you have is an incredible transformation of the global financial system. So there are different pieces of these moving parts. You've got the savings glut piece, you've got the Bretton Woods II currency peg dimension of it, you've got the vast growth in financial derivatives. So we're all touching on various pieces of these, and I think Jacob is absolutely right that the dollar is one symptom of all of these interactions in the global economy, and it would certainly be, I think, very dangerous now to think about, replaying the Plaza meeting now 20 plus years later, although I guess you'd have to get a condo at the Plaza since they're not renting hotel rooms anymore. But I think the broader point about the breakout of inflation, I guess I'm in the glasses half full camp here. There are stagflation pressures. There are these issues that we're addressing. But I think ultimately, the world's central bankers, have gotten the message, and I think ultimately we will not have a breakout of a great inflation, although we may have much tighter monetary policies than we have currently that are required to keep inflation in check.
I agree with Jacob. I don't think there's any reason for there to be a grand international statement on currencies. The problem in the currency market has its roots elsewhere. And just making statements about where the dollar should be, I don't think would be particularly helpful. I think you're absolutely right that we probably wouldn't be here today discussing this issue were it not for the subprime crisis. But the subprime mortgage crisis is part and parcel, in my view, of a long period of excessively loose monetary policy. What I'm concerned about is that we're trying to deal with it through monetary policy. By aggressively lowering interest rates, and you referred to the coordinated central bank action earlier, this is supposed to be an alternative to the discount window because of the stigma attached to borrowing from the discount window. Rather than surreptitiously bailing out the banking sector by creating new public debt on the books of our central banks, which is very, very dangerous. It can undermine the foundation of the economy, which is indeed our currency. We should be dealing with this subprime crisis directly. in my view, through transparent government intervention where people can see what's going on and they know precisely what the parameters of the intervention will be.
What are the real political, rather than technical policy errors that could really move us into uncharted territory? John?
Yeah, I say anything that reduces confidence in United States policy. A flagrant effort to just spend, stop talking about reducing the budget deficit. If we can't get these long-term entitlement things settled, that'll also reduce confidence. I think the international side is awfully important. It's very important especially for the administration to be open about our foreign investment policy, to welcome investment as much as we can. So those are signs of confidence. But I think on the monetary side, the Fed chairman has to go testify at the Congress, and I think the notion that one of the goals of monetary policy is to maintain the purchasing power of our currency, that's price stability, is a very important element of confidence. So those are the things that we have to happen. I think, listen to the candidates, which ones are speaking out most about a strong, confident U.S. policy, and those are the ones that will be better for the dollar.
Well, let me bring in Ben at this point, because you mentioned in the context of the European nations 10 minutes ago the possibility of seeing protectionist sentiment really take root in 2008, and I agree. I think there's a risk of that. Is that one of the political shocks that here in the U.S. could?
I think that's one of them. I think the one that concerns me most is a more domestic response, and that is what I would call further socialization of the mortgage market in the United States. If Congress should get particularly aggressive on that front, I think we could undermine the potency of monetary policy to deal with precisely these issues, because we're going to build up the potential for greater such mortgage crises in the future.
It is worth remembering, I mean, we look back on 150 years of history and think that some of the things that we saw in the late 19th century or in the 1920s and 30s can't possibly happen again. Britain just had a true, genuine run on a bank with people lined up in the street, kind of round the block.
Politely, though.
Politely, yeah. Very politely, very politely. But photographs, the likes of which one has not seen for 40 years, with people kind of queuing up outside branches of Northern Rock to take their money out.
Not 40, it was 1866 with Overend Gurney, wasn't it?
The thing that really went wrong with Northern Rock is that its chairman, he's a very good friend of mine, was a former journalist of The Economist. That's the